Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we are jumping into a couple of IPAs. These are standard IPAs, both by Brewers. I've never had anything from before, so win-win for me today. I get my hop fix and try some beers from a couple brewers that are brand new to me. So we're going to be starting today with Tombstone Brewing Company's More Hops. This one clocks in at 7.5% ABV. Brewed with Citra, Amarillo, and Mosaic hops, and it has been quadruple dry hopped. They are based in Tombstone, Arizona. Moving on to beer number 2. This is Trophy Brewing Company's Gotta Go Back. It is a West Coast style IPA, clocking in just lower at 7.3% ABV. This one brewed with a blend of Simcoe and Citra hops. So they're sharing a hop here with the Citra. All the hops both of these chose, very high alpha acid content indeed. Trophy Brewing Company is based in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I think I've got some really excellent beer to look forward to here. I'm very excited, and we're going to jump right in. Starting with Tombstone Brewing Company's More Hops. This one clocks in at 7.5% ABV. Okay, so jumping right in with the first beer of today's IPA review, we have got Tombstone Brewing Company's More Hops, 7.5% ABV on this one, brewed with a combination of Amarillo, Citra, and Mosaic hops, quadruple dry hopped, based in Tombstone, Arizona. So, first beer I've ever had by Tombstone. I read on the back, it sounds like this is an amped up version of one of their standard IPAs that they offer. So I would be curious to kind of try these back to back just to see what the difference is, but nonetheless, you tell me you got a lineup of Citra, Amarillo, Mosaic, you quadruple dried hopped it, it's got more than your standard, and you know that's got my attention to be certain. So in terms of their label art, very clean design. It might be a little hard to see, but up on top their label has a beer sticking out of a graveyard, kind of cool looking. I'm a big fan. That's the extent of label art, so let's get this cracked. Gently. Gently, all right. And get this poured right in the glass. Okay, this one is pouring right in. That Goldilocks color spectrum for an IPA. It does actually look like there might be a little bit of a haze here to this one, which is okay. But it doesn't look crystal clear to me. Not super duper hazy, but I did detect a little bit of haze. All right. Visually, yeah, it definitely is hazy. It's a nice bright yellow golden color. So this is really just kind of the telltale IPA color. It's kind of a classic color spectrum. In terms of carbonation I see in the glass, it's mostly tight. It's relatively fast. It did form a pretty nice head here, and the head does actually look quite creamy. I'm already starting to get some aromas coming up here. It's smelling really good, so let's get right up on it. Oh, wow. That absolutely just smells like a big pile of a bunch of different ripe, fresh fruit. Okay, so first thing I'm getting is pineapple. I'm getting papaya. There's some underlying citrus. Smells very strongly of grapefruit. That, I'm sure, is coming from the Citra. That's very common. There is a little bit of a blueberry aroma. That's pretty common with Mosaic. It's kind of getting drowned out by the pungency of these kind of citrusy and tropical fruit aromas, but it does smell quite nice. At days in, I'm really enjoying smelling this beer. Quad dry hopped, I'm not surprised that it's got so much in terms of aroma coming to the table, but you know, we didn't crack this just to sniff it. Let's jump right in. Oh yeah. Oh, that is a very, very nice IPA. Okay. Yeah, I'm all about that. I'm enjoying everything I just tasted there. So, the first thing I noticed when I started swishing in my mouth, and this kind of caught me aback, just given the exact hop profile they use, Citra, Amarillo, Mosaic, all high alpha acid content hops. They tend to bring a ton of aroma to the table, yes, but also a ton of different flavors to the table. The flavor that I got very big and pungently up front that I did not expect was this incredible earthiness. That's the first hop characteristic came through. It's kind of like a super amped up, Fuggle. If you took a Fuggle hop and dumped in the amount of alpha acid content that you're getting with these big hops, that's kind of the experience I just had. I didn't expect it. Very, very pleasantly surprised. Immediately behind that, yeah. And this happens with a lot of big new hops that have been out and getting very popular the last few years. It's why people keep using them. Citra hops do impart a lot of citrus aroma, but they also do in terms of flavor. And the way that it normally presents itself, sometimes orange, sometimes limey, sometimes lemony, but almost dominant all the time. You get a ton of grapefruit. That's coming through in this. And maybe it's on the heels of that earthy bite I got up front, but the way that that's presenting itself in the profile is almost rind and citrus oils or extracts. It's very, very bitter. And that's the next thing I want to talk about. Aside from the shock of the flavors and the layer that I got them, this is surprisingly bitter. I didn't expect it from a hazy. Certainly not one that focused so much on dry hopping and quad at that, but they were not shy about how many hops they added into the boil stage and extracting those alphas, because wow, this is aggressively bitter. I'm a big, big fan. I'm going to jump back in. There's a ton happening flavor-wise here. I need to get another sip, just wrap my head around it. Complex. Big earthy. Citrus behind that. So there's that grapefruit kind of essence. There's also a little suggestion of ripe orange and lime. There is a little tropical fruit essence that comes through in there. It reminds me most closely of passion fruit. I didn't pick up that in the aroma. I was getting dominant papaya and pineapple. Flavor profile is coming through kind of as passion fruit, mixing with that earthiness, that bitterness, and the citrus undertones. There's a slight twinge of pine. That often happens from Citra as well. Mosaic, I'm not really picking up any blueberry flavors directly related to that hop, but a little bit in the aroma. In terms of body and mouthfeel, this is a nice body on this beer. 7.5, that's a pretty good clip for a standard IPA, and it feels appropriately heavy. It's exactly what I expected for that ABV range. Mouthfeel, same thing. It feels classic IPA. When you start to agitate around the palate, it does get quite a bit creamier, quite lush. Very nice body, very nice mouthfeel. Just tremendous flavor, incredible aroma. So what's the finish like? Well, this one's quite pungent. The end of each sip, it's quite long, and really the punch, it's almost straight up, boom, out of the gate. I mean, and then it's just peaking and holding that intensity, and it does slowly start to peter off, and they all just kind of back off, but they're all mishmashing in there. At the very, very end of the finish on this, what you're left with is just this intensely bitter sensation that does put me back in mind of like citrus rind or oil in tandem with that intense earthiness. Kind of the fruity essences go away, and it's just earthy and slight citrusy and intensely bitter still to the end. Even though it's dissipating, that bitter intensity cannot be overstated. Wow, tremendous beer. What a great first experience for jumping into a beer from a new brewer. Very, very exciting, exceptional IPA in my opinion. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, count my scores. When we come back, we will get to the second beer of today's review. That is Trophy Brewing Company's Gotta Go Back. That's a West Coast style IPA that clocks in at 7.3% ABV. Okay, now jumping into the second beer of today's IPA review, we've got another new brewer for me. This is Trophy Brewing Company's Gotta Go Back. It's a West Coast style IPA, 7.3% ABV on this one, brewed with Citra and Simcoe hops, based in Raleigh, North Carolina. So first thing first, we have to talk about this label art. I'm going to try to get this as close as I can to the camera. Gotta get back. That's a nod to Back to the Future. Absolute classic, and indeed that is the DeLorean DC-12. I believe that's the name of the model. They only had one. It's the only car. But nonetheless, really awesome label art. It's kind of got the Back to the Future script. I'm a big, big fan. This, honestly, I wish I had gotten a second can of this so I could save one can unopened just for the label art. Anyway, let's get this cracked. West Coast style. Been a while since I've had a West Coast style outside of my daily drinker. Sierra Nevada Torpedo. So let's get this poured right in the glass. Okay. This is pouring a classic IPA golden yellow color. Absolute classic here. Give it a chance for head formation. Yeah, that's not going to have any problems there. I'm going to back that off. Okay, visually, yeah, classic IPA color. True, bright golden yellow. In terms of effervescence, I don't see a big rush. Looked like pretty much all the activity happened to form this lush head. Very creamy indeed. I'm starting to smell a lot of the hop coming out, so let's get right up over the glass, see exactly what we detect. Okay, so in terms of pungency of aroma, it smells quite nice. It's not super pungent, not anywhere as pungent as that quadruple dry hopped one that we had first here, but it smells quite nice. And I don't want to say that it doesn't smell like a typical IPA brewed with either Citra and or Simcoe, but it's not putting forth very front and center and present a lot of those aroma profiles you would expect. So I'm not really picking up citrus at all, which is surprising. I'm picking up a little bit of tropical fruit. Okay, so the head's just really thick. The citrus started to come out of the glass. Yeah, a little bit of lemon, a little bit of orange, a little bit of grapefruit. All aromas I expect, both from Simcoe and Citra in particular. I'm also getting this nice earthy backbone that's coming through as well. That is for sure coming from the Simcoe. I know because I brewed with that one a lot. And there's some kind of tropical fruit overtones in here, a little bit of pineapple. Maybe some stone fruit as well. It's a little hard to say, slightly apricot-y, but overall, smells quite nice. More or less what you'd expect with a blend of Simcoe and Citra hops. Had to settle down beautifully, so let's just jump right in and see what this new Brewers West Coast style IPA is about. Yeah, here we go. I'm 2 for 2 today. Been a while since I've had, let alone a single IPA that was like, wow, that one really blew me away. But had 2 in the same day that were new to me that really from the absolute hophead side of me as a beer drinker really got me excited. Both of these beers are doing this. That last one, absolutely amazing. This one, distinctly different, equally amazing. So first thing first. Yes, absolutely West Coast style IPA. They nailed it. This is another one where the bitters are very forward. Both Simcoe and Citra, very high alpha acid hops. There's no secret there. Again, for classic West style, you're using a lot of them. You're extracting a lot of those alphas into the boil. They did exactly that. This is very bitter forward. Though funny enough, this one's not quite as astringently bitter up front. The bitters come a little bit more on the back, which actually in my experience reminds me a lot of how a typical West Coast style IPA presents itself. In fact, Sierra Nevada Torpedo Extra IPA, my kind of go-to de facto daily drinker, being a big hophead and massive West Coast style fan, that one is all Magnum hops. That's what they use. And that presents itself very similarly how it does here. You get a little bit of a bite up front. You know it's there. You know it's hop forward. It's got that bitterness, but it's really on the back end where the bitters shine. So you're really getting a lot more of the actual hop flavor profile up front. Even though you get that nice kick of bitters, it's much more so up front. And really, one of the other defining characteristics, they don't always have to be this way, but kind of a de facto for West Coast style, aside from being more hop forward and bitter forward, is that they do tend to use hops that have a lot of that piney, resiny quality to them, which that's really a two-way tie for first for me. Earthy and that pine resinous. I absolutely love it, and I'm getting both in this beer, and it's just marvelous. Okay, so let's jump back in for body and mouthfeel. I'm going to think on the finish and this flavor development a bit more. Okay, so body and mouthfeel. The body is a little heavier than I would expect for an IPA in this range. Mouthfeel, a little more viscous. a little more resistant. Honestly, it feels a lot more akin to a double IPA, even though it's got a lower ABV than on the first. This flavor profile, absolutely delicious, gets amplified on second sip. So up front, I'm getting a ton of earthiness. I'm definitely getting pine. I'm definitely getting resin and earth. There's just a slight suggestion of some citrus notes coming through from the Citra. I'm guessing that they let Simcoe kind of be the dominant hop here, because that earthiness and that resin nature is certainly taking the forefront of these two hop profiles. Absolutely delicious. Really, really intense earthiness and bitter and resin, which, it's the flavor profile that I love the most, and it's the one that I crave the most when I'm in the mood for an IPA. This is absolute exactly as advertised. This is through and through a well executed West Coast style IPA. I couldn't be happier about it. In terms of the finish, as you might expect with a West Coast style IPA with big, bold, pungent hops and bitters, yeah, the finish on this one is quite long. It is still lingering, just bitters and resin and earth dancing on the very back of my palate. And it's still quite intense. It's probably been 30 seconds since my last sip. It is still there. It's not letting go. And that really does remind me of the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. And that is the highest, flattering comparison I could make. I absolutely love it. There's a reason I drink that as my go-to. This, if I could get my hands on this readily, would easily be in my rotation. I mean, this is just an absolute treat of a beer, a wonderful, wonderful representation of what the sub-style of West Coast IPA is. Bitter forward, pungent, bold. The flavors are bold, the bitters linger, and it's just so well executed. I am a big fan of this one. It's an absolute treat. Balance, they let the hops be the star of the show. That's how it should be, in my opinion, with an IPA. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That's what I'm looking for. It's a style all about the hops. In terms of the malt bill, it's clearly visually a classic IPA malt bill. In terms of what you actually get in the flavor profile department, this one, it really doesn't come into play that much. There's a little bit of graininess at the back, and it comes entirely on the back end. But really, these hops are so bold, so pungent, they use so much of them. That's what's shining through, and that, to me, is just a great decision. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up my scores. When we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both beers, we're going to get them ranked. Starting with the Tombstone Brewing Company's More Hops, 7.5% ABV on this IPA, brewed with Citra, Amarillo, and Mosaic hops, quadruple dry hopped, based in Tombstone, Arizona. So talk about what a great introduction to a brewer. Honestly, for this hop head, it doesn't get much better than this on a first beer as an introduction to anybody. So let's get on with this IPA review. Starting with the aroma, I knew this was going to be big. Quad dry hopped, you kind of expect it. All the dry hopping adds a little bit of flavor elements, but it's dominantly done for not extracting base alpha acids into the beer, but rather for imparting layers of aroma character to the beer, and this was no exception. It was so complex and layered and had all of the classic aromas that you would expect from this blend. Really great blend, by the way, and I mean, the pungency was just off the charts. It does get a perfect 10 out of 10 for the aroma. For the taste, I was very, very surprised. When I first poured it, I said, okay, hazy, never really know what to expect. Not, that all hazies are not super bitter pungent, but I couldn't believe it. This beer packs an absolute punch. It was upfront, the intensity of the hop flavor. A lot of earthiness that came through, a lot of the citrus, some of the subtle tropical notes, but really the thing that just stuck with me the most of all was the absolute pungency of the bitters on this beer. I didn't expect it, and I absolutely welcomed it, and it blew me away. Taste, 10 out of 10. For the body, this was a classic IPA body for 7.5. I mean, it was picture perfect for the range. Body does get a 10 out of 10. Mouthfeel, same story here. It had the exact mouthfeel you expect in an IPA. Got a little bit silkier, a little bit creamier, agitating around the palate. It felt just right. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finish Finish on this beer was very, very long. Once I had that first sip, I kind of had a suspicion because the flavors were so bold and they were so pungent, and lingering hop characteristics and most importantly bitters really did extend the end well above average. Finish on this one gets a 9 out of 10. Head and retention, this one did fantastic. I would dare say textbook, it does get a 10 out of 10. Appearance-wise, this was classic IPA, exactly what I think of when I think of an IPA. Gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance, honestly, this is exactly how I like an IPA to be balanced. It's a story of the hops. That's what the beer style is about, and everything else takes a back seat to that. This beer met that mission head on with flying colors. The hops were so present, so pungent. Yes, the malt bill was there, but the hops took front and center stage. Gets a perfect 10 out of 10 from me. Feeling in the intangible, I absolutely loved it. It's been a while since I've had an IPA that got me this excited about where we are in the state of IPAs. Frankly, it's what I needed. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, for my money, it just doesn't get much better than this. This is exactly what I look for and what I crave in an IPA. For all of the IPAs I drink, it just seems like more and more these days, brewers are moving away from that. And I appreciate trying different things, but still have some options for classic IPA lovers out there. They did that. This gets a 10 out of 10 from me, which brings the total score on Tombstone Brewing's More Hops to a 99 out of 100. Just about as good as it gets. Moving on to beer number 2. This is Trophy Brewing Company's Gotta Go Back, the West Coast style IPA. 7.3% ABV on this one, blend of Citra and Simcoe hops based in Raleigh, North Carolina. Again, for another first beer introduction to a brewer, this one did it. Starting with the aroma. I was surprised by the relative lack of pungency of the aroma. Citra and Simcoe hops are big, bold, high alpha acid content hops, saying brewing West Coast style. Really, that's much more related to flavor. They didn't mention anything about dry hopping, so sure, it's not going to have the same aroma pungency as something that's been quadruple dry hopped. But it was average. You could smell it. You could pick up the subtleties of what to expect. It just wasn't super pungent. It gets a 5 out of 10. For the taste on this, yet again, another absolute winner. Exactly as advertised. West Coast style IPA, absolutely yes. Layers of flavor again, absolutely yes. The earthiness of this one was really strong up front. Little bit of citrus side. It was really more rind and kind of citric oil than the actual flesh of the fruit. A lot of pine, a lot of resin. I mean, it was almost the West Coast style quintessential textbook. This is what a West Coast style IPA is. Pungent, big, bold bitters. Absolutely loved it. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the body, this was near a mirror image of the first beer. It was textbook. The body does get a 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel on this one, exact same story as the body. It was textbook. It does get a 10 out of 10. The finish on this one. Finish was exceptionally long. Even longer so than on the first beer, which, West Coast style IPA, I did kind of anticipate, and it was ludicrously long. Those bitters positively lingered, and still tons of that earthiness and that kind of citrus, rind, and oily, just all culminating in the back. It was really the impetus for pushing that finish out. And it did have a pretty intense arc up and a pretty natural bell curve. It was just on the back end, just how far out it went. Finish gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Head and retention, this was almost identical to the first one again. Perfect 10 out of 10. Appearance-wise, yet again, nailed it. That was a classic IPA yellow I think of in my head. Perfect 10 out of 10. For the balance, where really you're starting to see a lot of commonalities and parallels here. The balance on this one was phenomenal. Yet again, another IPA where the hop was front and center stage. The malt bill was there as the backbone, but the hops, got to tell their story. And that's exactly what I look for in an IPA, really. That's how, in my opinion, it should be. Again, I appreciate all different sub-styles of IPA, but we need more of these back in the market. I'm glad that there are some out there for my fellow hop heads. Balance on this one, absolute 10 out of 10. Feeling of the intangible, you probably guessed, I absolutely loved it. It does get a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, yet again, for my money, it just doesn't get much better than this. A 10 out of 10 certainly as an IPA and certainly as a West Coast style IPA. well deserved. Which brings the total score on Trophy Brewing Company's got to go back to a 95 out of 100. So all totaled, a whopping 4-point spread here, a 99 and a 95. This one really only lost points in aroma, it is what it is. This one only lost 1 point in finish, it is what it is. Out of the two of them, if you're an absolute hop head and you are craving hops front and center and more bitter forward nature, these two are exactly what the doctor ordered. You cannot go wrong with either, and I would encourage you, if you can get your hands on them, to pick up both. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you can just click on the notification link icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.